Backstage at the Market Square Arena, a man is trying to stand up. He is 42 years old, but he looks 60. His body is swollen, bloated by a cocktail of 14 different prescription drugs coursing through his veins. He is wearing a white jumpsuit that is encrusted with jewels, but underneath, he is wearing a corset just to hold his organs in place. He can barely breathe. His colon is paralyzed. His heart is enlarged to twice its normal size. He is in agony. His manager, a man called the Colonel, doesn't ask if he is okay. He just checks the ticket sales. The show must go on. The man walks onto the stage. The crowd screams. They don't see the dying man. They see the king. He sits at the piano. He is sweating profusely. He looks like he might collapse at any second. And then he touches the keys. He starts to sing Unchained Melody. And for 3 minutes, the miracle happens. The pain vanishes. The drugs vanish. The voice, that angelic, thunderous voice, soars to the heavens. He hits the high note, and he smiles. It is the smile of a man who knows he is saying goodbye. 6 weeks later, he will be found dead on his bathroom floor, face down in a pool of vomit. But he didn't die in that bathroom. He died here, on this stage, squeezed dry by the very people who claimed to love him. Ask anyone who Elvis Presley is, and they will tell you he is the king of rock and roll, the symbol of freedom, the rebel who shook his hips and terrified the government. But that is the lie we tell ourselves. The truth. Elvis Presley was the least free man on planet Earth. He was a billionaire who never wrote a check. He was a global icon who was forbidden from touring the world. He was a sex symbol who slept in a bed surrounded by armed guards and yes men. We see the cape. We see the gold records. We see the private jet. But we don't see the cage. We don't see the contract that treated him like a circus animal. We don't see the manager who took 50% of everything, an extortion rate unheard of in history. Elvis wasn't a king. He was a very expensive, very profitable slave. This video is not a biography. We are not going to list his #1 hits. This is a crime scene investigation. We are going to explore the darkest relationship in the history of show business, the bond between Elvis Presley and Colonel Tom Parker. It is a modern retelling of the Faust legend. A young, poor boy sells his soul to a mysterious stranger in exchange for the world. He gets the fame. He gets the girls. He gets the castle. But the devil always collects his debt. Our thesis today is painful. Elvis Presley didn't die of a heart attack. He died of a broken spirit. He was killed by the very thing he chased, the American dream. We will see how the industry took a sensitive, spiritual artist and turned him into a hamburger, a product to be consumed until there was nothing left but the wrapper. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. The year is 1954, Memphis, Tennessee. A shy, awkward truck driver with greasy hair walks into Sun's studio. He wants to record a song for his mother's birthday. He holds the microphone like he's afraid of it. He has no idea that within 2 years, he will be the most famous human being alive. But lurking in the shadows is a carnival barker, an illegal immigrant with a fake name and a mysterious past. He is watching the boy. He doesn't hear music. He hears the sound of a cash register ringing. The boy is looking for a father figure. The man is looking for a puppet. When they meet, the fuse is lit. The explosion will change the world, but it will burn them both to ashes. Let's turn the page to Chapter 1. Act 1. The Twinless Twin. Before the gold records, before the jumpsuits, there was a grave. January 8, 1935. East Tupelo, Mississippi. The poorest town in the poorest state during the Great Depression. In a 2-room shotgun shack, Gladys Presley gives birth. The first baby comes out silent, stillborn. They name him Jesse Garon. 35 minutes later, the second baby arrives, screaming, alive. They name him Elvis Aaron. Because they were too poor to afford a real coffin, Jesse was buried in a shoebox in an unmarked grave nearby. This is the psychological key to unlocking Elvis Presley. He was what psychologists call a twinless twin. From the moment he took his first breath, he felt a phantom limb. He grew up hearing his mother whisper at the grave, "You are living for 2 people now. Elvis, you have the strength of Jesse inside you." Imagine the weight of that on a child. He wasn't just allowed to be Elvis. He had to be extra loud, extra talented, extra successful. He had to justify why he survived and his brother didn't. He was a lonely boy. He didn't fit in. He wore strange clothes. He was bullied. His only refuge was the Assembly of God Church, where the preachers jumped and shouted, and the music shook the floorboards. That was the only place where it was okay to lose control. 1954. Elvis is 19. He has recorded That's All Right at Sun's studio. It's making noise on the local radio. But Elvis wants validation. In the South, there is only one stage that matters: the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. It is the Carnegie Hall of country music. If you make it there, you are a star. If you fail there, you are nothing. October 2, 1954. Elvis drives to Nashville. He is terrified. He is wearing a pink suit, something no respectable country singer would touch. He walks onto the stage. The Ryman Auditorium is filled with conservative, older people. They expect polite cowboys standing still. Instead, they get Elvis. He starts to shake his leg. It's nerves. Pure, unadulterated panic. But to the audience, it looks vulgar. It looks like sex. He sings Blue Moon of Kentucky. He speeds it up. He breaks the rhythm. The audience doesn't clap. They stare. It is a wall of silence. After the show, the Opry manager, Jim Denny, the most powerful man in Nashville, looks at the boy. He doesn't offer advice. He offers an execution. He says, "Son, you ain't going nowhere. You ought to go back to driving a truck." Elvis walked out into the alley and cried. He cried all the way back to Memphis. He smashed his records. He told his father he was quitting. The rejection broke him. He was just a hillbilly in a pink suit, and the world had just laughed in his face. But someone else was watching that failure. Colonel Tom Parker. He wasn't a colonel. He wasn't even Tom Parker. He was Andreas Cornelis van Quake, an illegal immigrant from the Netherlands who was rumored to have fled a murder charge in his home country. He was a carnival barker. He knew how to paint sparrows yellow and sell them as canaries. When he saw Elvis fail at the Opry, he didn't see a lack of talent. He saw an opportunity. He saw a boy who was desperate for a father figure. Parker swooped in when Elvis was at his lowest. He didn't talk about art. He didn't talk about music. He talked about revenge. He told Elvis, "Those people in Nashville are idiots. Stick with me, son, and I will make them beg to buy a ticket." He promised Vernon Presley, Elvis's weak and insecure father, that he would take care of everything. He promised Gladys that her boy would be safe. And so, the deal was struck. Elvis didn't hire a manager. He hired a master. He handed over his career, his decisions, and his soul to a man who looked at him and saw a sideshow attraction. Why did Elvis sign with the devil? Because he was hungry, not just for food, but for love, for acceptance. The lesson here is profound. Desperation is blinding. When you are broken, when you have just been told to go back to driving a truck, you are vulnerable. You will grab the first hand that reaches out to you without checking if that hand holds a knife. Elvis suffered from imposter syndrome. He deep down believed the Opry manager was right. He believed he was just a truck driver getting lucky. Parker exploited that insecurity. He positioned himself as the only person who believed in Elvis. He isolated him. Young artists, entrepreneurs, dreamers, listen to this. A mentor empowers you to lead. A predator trains you to follow. Elvis thought he was getting a partner. In reality, he was signing his own adoption papers into a golden cage. He thought Parker was saving him from failure. He didn't realize Parker was saving him for the slaughter. The ink on the contract was dry. The king was crowned, but the chains were already locked. 1958. Elvis is drafted into the army. The colonel orchestrated this to make him look like a good American boy, to sanitize his rebel image. But while he was away, the center of his universe collapsed. Gladys Presley, his mother, his anchor, the only person who loved Elvis for Elvis, died of heart failure and hepatitis. She was 46. At the funeral, Elvis didn't just cry. He threw himself onto the coffin. He hugged her cold body and refused to let go. Witnesses said he wailed like a wounded animal. "She's all I lived for. I lived my whole life just to buy her a house." When they finally pulled him away, something in Elvis died too. The boy was gone. He returned from the army, a changed man. His eyes were harder. He was medicated, introduced to amphetamines by a sergeant to stay awake on guard duty. And waiting for him at the dock wasn't a therapist. It was the colonel. Parker didn't give him time to grieve. He looked at the grieving son and said, "Get to work. We have movies to make." Welcome to the 1,960 seconds. While the Beatles were reinventing music and Bob Dylan was changing the culture, Elvis Presley was trapped in a nightmare of bad scripts and beach parties. The colonel signed him to a punishing contract. 3 movies a year. No touring. No serious acting. Just formula. Blue Hawaii. Clambake. Harum Scarum. Elvis hated them. He called them travelogues. He knew they were garbage. He wanted to be James Dean. Parker made him a singing car salesman. Imagine the humiliation. The king of rock and roll, forced to sing "Old MacDonald Had a Farm" to a basset hound in a movie while wearing a cheap costume. He was making millions, but he was spiritually bankrupt. He fell into a deep depression. He surrounded himself with the Memphis Mafia, a group of yes-men who were paid to laugh at his jokes and supply him with pills. He would shoot out television sets when Robert Goulet came on. He would rent out entire movie theaters just to sit in the dark and eat meatloaf. He was hiding. The king had become a hermit in a castle made of fool's gold. 1,968. Elvis is 33 years old. In the pop culture world, he is a dinosaur. He hasn't performed live in 7 years. The colonel books a TV special, Parker's Vision. A Christmas show. He wants Elvis in a tuxedo, sitting by a fireplace, singing Silent Night. He wants to sell a safe, family-friendly product. But Elvis meets Steve Binder, a young, aggressive director. Binder looks Elvis in the eye and says, "Elvis, the colonel's idea is going to kill your career. You are a rock and roller. Go out there and prove it." For the first time in a decade, Elvis defies the colonel. He says no to the tuxedo. June 27, 1,968. The taping. Elvis walks out wearing black leather. Tight. Dangerous. He looks like a panther that hasn't eaten in weeks. He steps onto a small, square stage, surrounded by real people. No script, no safety net. He is terrified. His hands are shaking so hard he can barely hold the microphone. And then he plugs in. The first chord of Heartbreak Hotel rips through the air. He isn't singing to a dog anymore. He is screaming. He is sweating. He is prowling the stage. He is looking at the girls in the front row with eyes that could burn a hole through steel. It is pure, unfiltered sex and danger. In the middle of the set, he stops and tells the band, "Man, I just want to make some music." That was the truth. For 1 hour, the slave broke his chains. He wasn't the colonel's product. He was the king again. He saved his career in 60 minutes of raw adrenaline. The '68 comeback special was a massive hit. The world wanted Elvis back. Elvis was energized. He told the colonel, "I want to tour. I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Japan. I want to see the world." This was his dream, to be a global artist. But Colonel Parker had a secret he had hidden for decades. He was an illegal alien. He had no passport. If he left the United States, he could never come back. And he would never let Elvis go anywhere where he couldn't control the money. So, Parker lied. He told Elvis, "Security is too expensive overseas. It's not safe." Instead, he made a deal with the devil in the desert. Las Vegas. Parker signed a contract with the International Hotel. Elvis would perform 2 shows a night, 7 days a week, for 4 weeks at a time. Elvis was crushed. He didn't want to be a lounge singer, but he was told it was just for a little while. It wasn't. It was a life sentence. Why didn't he fire the colonel? Why didn't he get on a plane and fly to London alone? Because Elvis suffered from learned helplessness. The lesson here is tragic. Comfort is the enemy of freedom. Elvis hated the cage, but he loved the gold. He was addicted to the lifestyle. He had dozens of people on his payroll family, friends, hangers-on. He felt responsible for them. He needed the cash flow to keep the circus running. The colonel knew this. He kept Elvis spending. He kept him insecure. He made Elvis feel that without the colonel, the money would stop, and he would go back to being a dirt-poor boy in Tupelo. Elvis traded his artistic soul for financial security. He chose the safety of the cage over the uncertainty of the wild. And Vegas is a machine designed to kill time. Day becomes night. Night becomes day. There are no clocks. For a man addicted to pills and escaping reality, Vegas wasn't a residency. It was a tomb. And slowly, show by show, the leather-clad rebel of 1968 began to dissolve into the bloated, sequined ghost of 1977. The 1970 seconds became a blur of hotel rooms and airports. The colonel had locked Elvis into a grueling schedule. 2 shows a night, 7 days a week, for months on end. Why? Because the colonel was a gambling addict. While Elvis was upstairs singing his heart out, the colonel was downstairs at the Hilton Casino, losing millions of dollars. The colonel needed Elvis on stage to pay off his own debts. Elvis was no longer an artist. He was an ATM machine. He was bored. He was exhausted, to cope with the pain of performing karate kicks in a heavy jumpsuit, and to sleep after the adrenaline of the show. He turned to the only doctor who would listen, Dr. Nick. The prescriptions flowed like water. Uppers to wake up, downers to sleep, painkillers to exist. Elvis wasn't partying. He was medicating a broken soul. He sat in his suite at Graceland, reading spiritual books, searching for a meaning that fame couldn't give him. He asked his hairstylist again and again, why me? Why did God choose me? June 21, 1977. Rapid City, South Dakota, 6 weeks before he died. The cameras are rolling for a TV special. Elvis looks terrible. He is bloated. His eyes are puffy. He struggles to breathe. He forgets the lyrics to his old songs. The audience is uncomfortable. They are watching a king crumble. But then, he sits at the piano. He decides to sing Unchained Melody. The colonel didn't want him to play the piano. It showed his shaking hands. But Elvis didn't care. He takes a breath. It is a struggle. And then, the miracle happens. As he hits the first note, the years of pain, the drugs, the colonel, the caget, all falls away. For 3 minutes, his voice is crystal clear. It is powerful. It soars to the rafters. He hits the high note at the end with a smile that breaks your heart. In that moment, Elvis Presley wasn't a junkie. He wasn't a product. He was an angel, trapped in a dying body. He poured every ounce of his remaining life force into that song. It was his goodbye letter. He knew he was leaving, and he wanted to leave us with one last reminder of why he was the king. August 16, 1977. A hot afternoon in Memphis. Ginger Alden finds him on the bathroom floor. He had fallen face down. He was reading a book about the Shroud of Turin. The king was dead at 42. The world stopped. Radio stations played his music non-stop. Tens of thousands of weeping fans surrounded Graceland. But inside the house, the colonel didn't cry. When he heard the news, the first thing he did wasn't to comfort the family. He picked up the phone. He called the merchandisers. He said, "Print more records. Print more t-shirts. Nothing has changed." At the funeral, the colonel wore a baseball cap and a Hawaiian shirt. He looked at the coffin and saw one last payday. But death finally broke the chains. After Elvis died, his father Vernon and the courts looked at the books. They were horrified. They discovered the truth. The colonel had been taking 50% of Elvis's earnings for years. Standard managers took 15%. They found out the colonel had turned down world tours because he had no passport. The judge ruled that Colonel Parker's management was unethical and fraudulent. The world finally saw the truth. Elvis wasn't a reckless spender who lost his fortune. He was a victim of financial abuse. The colonel died years later. alone, gambling away the money he stole from Elvis. But Elvis became bigger than ever. Without the parasite, the host could finally fly. Graceland became a shrine, not to a tragedy, but to a spirit that refused to be silenced. So, what is the legacy of Elvis Presley? It is a warning, and it is a gift. The warning is clear. Talent is a resource, and like any resource, if it is not protected, it will be mined until it is empty. Elvis teaches us that you cannot buy happiness, and you certainly cannot buy freedom. He had all the money in the world, but he couldn't buy a ticket to London. But the gift is the voice. Despite the Colonel, despite the pills, despite the bad movies, the voice survived. Elvis proved that true art comes from suffering. He took the blues of the Mississippi Delta, the gospel of the church, and the pain of his own lonely heart, and he synthesized it into a sound that united the world. He died young, yes, but he lived enough for 10 lifetimes. He taught us that it is better to burn out than to fade away. But he also taught us to check the contract before you sign your life away to the man with the cigar. We have traveled a long, dusty road with Elvis Aaron Presley. From the shotgun shack in Tupelo, where he buried his twin brother, to the neon prison of Las Vegas, where he buried himself. If we look back at the tapestry of his life, a complete philosophy emerges. First, the twinless twin taught us the danger of desperation. Elvis was so hungry for love and validation that he opened the door to a predator. He taught us that when you feel unworthy, you are most likely to sell your soul for a discount. Second, the tragedy of Las Vegas taught us the horror of learned helplessness. Elvis proved that a cage made of gold is still a cage. He showed us that comfort is the enemy of freedom. He stayed safe, and it cost him his life. And finally, his dying performance of Unchained Melody taught us the resilience of the human spirit. Even when his body was broken, even when his mind was clouded, the art survived. He taught us that the voice inside cannot be killed, only silenced for a while. He was the king, yes, but he was also the sacrificial lamb on the altar of the American dream. To the artists, the creators, and the dreamers watching this, the Colonel is not dead. He is still out there. He is in the contract you didn't read. He is in the manager who tells you what to wear. He is in the voice that whispers, "Do it for the money." Elvis is whispering to you right now. He is telling you that ownership is everything. Own your masters. Own your decisions. And most importantly, own your mistakes. Don't be a passenger in your own life. Grab the steering wheel, even if the road is scary. It is better to drive a truck in freedom than to ride in a limousine as a hostage. Be the king of your own soul. That is the only kingdom that matters. Now, I turn the microphone to you. Was Colonel Parker a genius who made Elvis a star? or a monster who killed him? Could Elvis have saved himself, or was he doomed from the start? There are no easy answers, but I want to read your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation respectful. If this journey into the Heartbreak Hotel moved you, please hit that like button. It helps us keep the history alive. And if you are fascinated by kings who lost their crowns, you simply must watch our next episode on Michael Jackson. The parallels are terrifying. Another king, another tragedy, and another life consumed by the spotlight. Click right here to continue the journey. I'm Peter. Take care of your business in a flash. I'll see you in the next chapter of history.